All right, welcome back to Introduction to Machine Learning. I'm Sundeep Rangan at New York University. This is the 11th unit in this class, and today we're going to talk about principal component analysis, another very important technique in machine learning. So if you survive through this unit, what I'm going to hope to show you is identify when you can use dimensionality reduction techniques in general, of which PCA is a particular example. Then we're going to dive a little bit into the mathematics. So I'm going to show you how to mathematically describe principal component representations of data, show you how to compute them through some linear algebra, and then we're going to dive into Python and show you how to compute those PC components in sklearn and apply PCA transforms as a pre-processing step to either your classification or regression problems, which should allow you to expand the set of problems that you can deal with. If I have time, I'll also try to put up a video on a related technique on using low-rank transforms for recommender systems. All right, so let me start this with understanding what is dimensionality reduction and why you would want to use it in a problem. So the reason that you want to use dimensionality reduction is that many data sets have very high dimension, and that means that training any type of regression or classifier from those data sets can be difficult, particularly when the number of samples is small. Because when you have a large number of features in each sample, typically that classifier will need a large number of parameters. Let me just give you two examples. The first is EEG, which is a type of brain recording. And a number of students have often approached me to do projects on EEG data. It's super interesting, but one of the challenges they face is that each recording has a very large number of features, and that arises from the fact that the EEG recordings typically record at a number of channels at a very high sampling rate over many seconds. So you can easily have tens or even hundreds of thousands of features in each recording, and you have much less number of samples relative to those features. Another case that we're going to look at in this unit is in face recognition. And in this case here, you want to identify the identity of the face. That face image could also be pretty high resolution, and I'm going to give you some numbers later. And you might have much less number of examples relative to the number of features in that face. So let's look at that example in a little bit more detail just to understand where dimensionality reduction might come in. So we're going to consider that face recognition problem. And by that is the following. We're given some image of a face. If you're as old as I am, you will recognize this face. This is Colin Powell, politician from decades ago. And we're going to look at this data set later on. And what we want to do is build some classifier that gets this face and recognizes who this person is. Now, the problem here is that depending on the resolution, this could be pretty high dimensional. And when we try to build that classifier, remember that even a linear classifier, the number of parameters will scale linearly with the number of features. And that means that it can be difficult to train in two ways. When we have a large number of parameters, it means that we would need a large number of samples to train it, and the training could be computationally complex. So the question is, what can we do to try to make this simpler? And this is where dimensionality reduction comes in. The key idea is to try to reduce that input space dimension to some lower dimensional representation. So the case of the face recognition problem, I have some higher dimensional input, and I want to find some lower dimensional representation of that face. And that step is called dimensionality reduction, which is what I'm going to talk about today. And if I can do this lower dimensional representation, but still keep the salient information about this image, hopefully I can build a classifier that works just as well. And that classifier could be simpler because it's now operating on a much smaller dimensional space. These lower dimensional representations are also good for other tasks. For example, we'll be able to see that we can visualize the data in a lower dimensional space, and we can use it also for other clustering and unsupervised tasks, and also revealing kind of the underlying structure of the data. All right, with that introduction, we'll move on to the next unit. We'll start to jump into the mathematics of dimensionality reduction.